Hello, world, and welcome back to RotoWorld's DFS Building Block Show, Week 11. You know what time it is. I am your host, as always, John Daigle, joined by friend in life, Hayden Winks. Hayden, it's another two-man circus we have on slate here. How did everything go for you in Week 10, though, before we jump into the main slate?
Yeah, I lost my mustache, so it's a true two-man show. Nothing going on my upper lip anymore. Thank God. And
why? By the way, why? Like, it's still November. Like, it seems like you cut it loose quick.
Yeah, I did cut it probably too soon. I don't know. It was just looking horrible on these videos.
I mean, admittedly, it was looking bad. I'm not going to disagree with you there.
Yeah, I was mostly just trolling, so it'll be all right. But yeah, last week went well. I had like 3 more top 1% finishes. I've been playing a lot of Yahoo, and then I like DraftKings for the showdown slates. But I really like the Yahoo format, so I'm going to keep firing away at those things. But yeah, Kyler Murray, Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs turned out to be one of the best plays. So yeah, last week went well too.
We both agreed at the end of the show last week that the Bucs stack was the correct pivot off of or with Mike Davis to get leverage over the field. And we weren't concerned about their offense because they've been stuffed twice by New Orleans and in primetime against the Bears, 2 bad spots at bad times. So that's what we had. That's what we talked about anyways. Did you actually play them in Yahoo at the end of the day, though?
Yeah, I did. I did have a couple lineups. It just all depends. If you don't, I make like 4 or 5 lineups per quarterback when I pick one of those quarterbacks. And if you don't have the right high upside running back, it doesn't really matter. So I didn't get all of the pieces all at once, but on to the next week.
Yeah, on to next week. And we are here, of course, to move on to next week to talk about Week 11's main slate. Quick spring cleaning at the top. This slate, and then we will be back, us two, perhaps a guest. It's the holidays, which is why it was hard to find someone this week as well. But on Wednesday next week, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern, we'll talk for like 30, 45 minutes. We'll go game by game over the Thanksgiving slate only and talk about big like pivots for tournaments since, it's 3 games. You're going to need to have exposure in very unique ways and go heavy on the chalk over the field. So we'll be back to discuss every single player in that slate. And then I will be back on RotoWorld next Friday instead of the show and have a leverage article, just a unique overall view of the main slate for Week 12. But for now, Week 11, main slate only, excluding 2 primetime games. We don't have Patrick Mahomes. We don't have Travis Kelce. We don't have Darren Waller at tight end. We don't have George Kittle. We don't have Monday Night Football here between the Bucs and the Rams, 2 powerhouse offenses. So that has made a very unique slate. And as always, we're going to start with our decision point, the one conundrum we keep running into throughout the week when we've been building lineups while using your energy, lending it to us, and taking from the chat. So continue to feel free, ask DFS questions, no start stits. That's for Sunday, an hour before kickoff. And we'll get to them, and we'll just bounce this around with one another for the next 45 minutes or so. So, Hayden, let's start with your decision point on the week.
We have to figure out what the Saints are going to do at quarterback and how that kind of trickles down from the other players. Because what you see at the running back spot, you have Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook basically in a tier of their own. And if Taysom Hill is actually going to be the quarterback, which I am projecting that to be the case because Adam Schefter, the only person we can trust, said that was the case.
Right.
And we also had Nick Underhill kind of the entire week kind of like hinting that this was kind of leaning that way as well. So I do think Taysom Hill is going to see most of the snaps at quarterback. I'm not convinced it's going to be 100% of the snaps. I think in traditional passing downs, you could see Jameis Winston come in. But regardless, Taysom Hill being the 1A in a potential committee at quarterback this week, I think that you have to knock down Alvin Kamara's projection. You have to knock down Michael Thomas's projection just because Taysom Hill's going to be doing a lot more scrambling and a lot less checking down to these guys. You're going to see the pace go down because they're going to be running the ball more. And I'm just not convinced that Taysom Hill is the right answer for the Saints to be putting up 27-plus points this week either. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to get all the Alvin Kamara ownership now going to Dalvin Cook, who's probably going to be the most owned player by far on both sides.
So to be clear, the non-unique conversation already for this week is that Taysom Hill is a tight end on FanDuel. Having said that, I will say, of course you play him. This is kind of my decision point as well. And it's dealing with the chalk because there's really only 2 chalk players. And that is what you do with Dalvin Cook and Taysom Hill in this slate. So to speak on what you just talked about with Hill is that as a stone minimum tight end, you're basically playing a super flex on FanDuel. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, no Kelsey, no Darren Waller, no George Kittle. What's important about the slate is that no one is around to bury you, even if Taysom Hill fails. Like the most that can happen is 2 touchdowns by Mark Andrews. And the odds of even that happening are not likely. So Taysom Hill is just, to me, a no-brainer play, and you get unique exposure elsewhere. You play him in cash, you play him in tournaments, and who cares at all? Because no one else on this slate is going to bury you at that position. Having said that, of course, as a quarterback, there's enough volatility involved there, even a mid-game benching, that I can easily get off him. I'm still somewhat interested in Michael Thomas, although after a 30% target share last week, although, again, 7 targets, 2 catches for only 27 yards, clearly looks injured, and we don't know what to expect from Taysom Hill's arm more than anything. The rushing yards will probably be there. But the volatility is enough to get him benched, so sure, I don't mind going away from that at all. If you want to, as I talk about Dalvin Cook as my other decision point here, I think the way you handle that chalk is either play him with the Cowboys stack or around a Cowboys receiver as a mini stack, or you get off of him for one of Derrick Henry, Kamara, and Aaron Jones. And that's how you separate yourself, by playing a lower-owned back, also guaranteed to get 25-plus touches. So let's just say we do that here. How do you rank them this week between Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Alvin Kamara, knowing the Taysom Hill situation?
Yeah, I might even drop down even a couple more running backs down. I really like Miles Sanders a lot. I have him projected for just about as many points as the other guys, and he's a little bit cheaper. I don't want to be playing Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara anymore. I can't justify the price tag with the lack of passing threat with the Saints. And man, I don't know. Like, do you think Taysom Hill's going to be rostered on DraftKings, like tournaments? I mean, he's really cheap, obviously. You don't think anyone's going to play him on DraftKings?
No, I don't think so. What do you have his ownership right now? I know you keep ownership over there. I wouldn't think so. Even he's close to 5K on DraftKings, right? I know Jameis Winston was 5,400. That's what we were preparing for. But then all of a sudden we got the news, and the most important news, by the way, that they're not even going to have packages for Winston. Like, Winston is a reserve, and that's it. And I assume that's because, I don't know this for sure, but we know the Saints salary cap issues, and like Winston has playing time bonuses that are very significant, like upwards of $3 million. And so I wonder if they just can't afford, honestly, to play him.
I'm not convinced. I think James is going to play some. That's why I just don't want to play. I kind of want to just avoid the situation. And if one of them beats me, if Taysom Hill breaks off a 60-yard touchdown run or something crazy, then I'll live with it. The other thing is with the Falcons, like they're a top 2, top 3 run defense this year with Grady Jarrett up the middle. So, I mean, you're kind of playing with fire, at least to me. I'm going to be avoiding all those guys. But going back to the running backs, I think Derrick Henry is interesting. He's pretty expensive. I just hate playing Derrick Henry at that price tag just because he's so one-dimensional.
Well, that's why he would be – you're not playing him with Cook. I assume you can.
Yeah, no, as a pivot.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, I'm not sure. I think I would go Aaron Jones and Miles Sanders would be the highest priced running backs that I would be playing if I'm going to be getting off of Dalvin Cook. And
Miles Sanders, of course, will come in with no ownership whatsoever. Also, I will say the issue about even fading Dalvin Cook, why I'm scared to do it and why it buried me 2 weeks ago, is that his usage has changed since he's come back from injury. They basically have eliminated Alexander Mattison altogether, and now it's strictly Cook. He has 90 of the team's 108 backfield touches in the past 3 games since he returned, and that's mostly because 2 weeks ago, negative game script, because he helped build the lead, Alexander Mattison came in for touches when it didn't count at all. So if it is competitive whatsoever, not only can you not fade Cook, because he's going to continue to get 35-plus touches. He failed against the Bears, right? But he still got 30-plus touches in that game. So that's what we should probably expect if Andy Dalton and the Cowboys can carry any kind of weight whatsoever. I've been trying to convince myself that Dalton is a good cheap quarterback, but it just seems like an easy way to get buried if like Cam Newton or Deshaun Watson or one of these guys who we know can go off actually go off, because Andy Dalton also doesn't offer a rushing floor whatsoever.
You like the Cowboys. You gotta fill me in here. Andy Dalton, the offensive line play. We've seen Andy Dalton put up okay numbers with good talent around him behind some bad offensive line play. Is there any path that you can see the Cowboys outdoing their Vegas total? I was shocked that the Cowboys were only projected for 20 points this week. Yeah. I thought it should be a lot higher with the Vikings defense having nobody to rush the passer or defend the receivers. I would be somewhat surprised if Dalton isn't able to throw slants to CeeDee Lamb, get the ball to Amari Cooper, and then even get some downfield shots to Gallup.
So I agree with this. My double stack, if I even did this, would be Amari Cooper and Gallup. And the Vikings defense, as you said, we don't respect them. They just look good against Nick Foles because everyone looks good against Nick Foles. We're not worried about that whatsoever. Also, remember, with Garrett Gilbert, they put up 370 yards of offense against the Steelers defense. And now you're telling me what is presumably an upgrade in quarterback. I guess it is worried perhaps if there's COVID fog lingering, but an upgrade at quarterback essentially behind a healthier O-line that's healthier than it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now. We just haven't seen competent play under center in literally a month. And so it's almost recency bias. But again, can Dalton get 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? Because that's what you need, even at his low price tag. And I genuinely, I don't know, man. I really don't know.
I think it's possible. We talked about this earlier. I'm definitely going to enter the Millie Maker on DraftKings, the $500 entry one.
Hashtag
right.
Yep.
Not really. I'm firing one. If I was setting the lineup right now, it would be Dalton with Amari running it back with the Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. I haven't decided between one of those two. And the reason why I like this so much is, one, I think that Vegas is probably under-projecting them. I think that people are totally writing off Andy Dalton. We've seen Andy Dalton play at functional levels, and I think that the surrounding cast is definitely good enough. All of the prices are way, way, way down. So even like you don't need a massive ceiling from Amari Cooper if you're playing, because he's only down to like 5,300 or 5,400. And I think that the biggest benefit is you can get off of the Dalvin Cook chalk by going with the negatively correlated receivers of Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. We know that the total is perfect. So I think that you can get a really nice leverage play off of Dalvin Cook with Justin Jefferson running it back with the Cowboys stack. So I think that right now is my current lean on how I'm going to attack the Millie Maker, but I don't know. I need to watch more tape. I'm going to go grind the all 22 of Dalton's last start to see just how bad it was.
Don't do it. Don't hurt yourself like that. Ganja asks, I'll quickly bring up this game. It has nothing. It's a side point, but I still want to bring it up because this is one of the most touch and go games of the entire week. I was on the over earlier this week, but now Stafford seems like he's definitely going to play, even though he's questionable. But no Kenny Golladay, no Danny Amendola, no DeAndre Swift. Still in a good spot for Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson, but again, it's Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson, and they're probably going to be a committee, and we've seen them lean on Adrian Peterson over the more talented players so far this year, minus last week. And then, of course, on the other side of the ball, what Ganja Weekly viewers asking about is Phillip Walker, Will Greer. We're not going to know until Saturday's walkthrough because Matt Rule said he named the starter then. But it's an XFL quarterback who couldn't throw to his left and hasn't played against league competition, has been bad the few snaps he's gotten against league competition. So I'm just not into it all. If it's PJ Walker, I'm genuinely more interested in seeing if Gerard Davis is a go and firing up the Lions defense, which won't be rostered at all because everyone will try and get excited about a guy who looked good in XFL.
Yeah, and you can see a situation where they rotate quarterback spots, one of these guys get benched just because the Panthers are just trying to see what they have behind Teddy Bridgewater, build their long-term future. I'm sure they're going to try to give Greer one last chance to see, or PJ Walker. So the problem is Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel are priced as if Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback. So I'm going to be avoiding it.
And we're going to pull up the DFS optimizer, build a tournament lineup here together as we talk about our favorite plays. And I will say, as Rick Daddy says, Burrow an easy pivot off the guys we've talked about. That's true. My concern is, though, over the next 48 hours, it seems like despite having a middling total, that game's going to come in really high rostered across the board. It seems like everyone's caught on that the Washington team total is probably a little too low and is going to go high since Alex Smith has been serviceable and a viable starter with good options underneath. And then Joe Burrow, perhaps the pressure doesn't matter from Washington, but of course we got T. Higgins full practice today. He's going to play with Tyler Boyd. So I am worried that game, even though it seems sneaky, will not be sneaky whatsoever. And in that case, I don't mind getting off players like that.
Yeah, the other issue when you're talking about like PJ Walker and some of these other guys is like Alex Smith, like you said, is 5,300. I think Andy Dalton's in play at 5,300. Joe Burrow, 5,500. Phillip Rivers in an okay spot at 5,600. I mean, there's a lot of cheap guys. And like you said earlier to lead off the show, what makes this slate interesting is you're you don't have the locked in like elite quarterbacks this week. Even the best quarterbacks are in odd situations or haven't been playing well.
I will break, just because Fear and Sauce tunes into every show we do, I will break my code of silence on start sits for one time only and say that I am starting Taysom Hill at tight end and season long over everyone but Travis Kelce. That is the one volatile player. I think Travis Kelce's floor is safe every single week as the clear-cut tight end one. Everyone else doesn't matter whatsoever, even Mark Andrews. So Taysom Hill on ESPN leagues is the tight end 2 this week. Anyways, let's go ahead and build some lineups here now. Go ahead and get us started with your highest exposure player on the week.
Well, I think it's going to be Dalvin Cook, but let's make this a little more interesting. Let's plug in Miles Sanders. And the reason why I like Miles Sanders, last week he got unlucky with the touchdowns, but you saw it earlier in the season. He was the lead guy when he was fully healthy. And I don't think that he was getting subbed out at the goal line. Boston Scott ripped off a long run. And Corey Clement was just kind of in the game when they scored that last touchdown. So I think Miles Sanders is an awesome play. He looked really good. He looked fully healthy, and I think they're going to give him the ball.
Okay, I'll find Miles Sanders here really quick. That game also will come in under roster for sure. No, I don't think anyone's going to touch that game. It looks like Wyatt Teller's a go. He's questionable. He's clearly the biggest difference maker on the interior for that team, but he played 100% of their snaps last week with the same injury. So I think it's more, what do you call it? They're just putting in the work. There's a better term for that. I just can't remember off the top of my head. My highest exposure is the Keenan Allen without a Charger stack. I've been thinking about Justin Herbert and the Chargers and running it back with a Jets receiver all week long. And then the more I think about it, it just seems too volatile to bet on Anthony Lynn against Adam Gase. Having said that, we know that Keenan Allen, no matter what, is safe. Even last week, his first week, full game this year with Justin Herbert, to not see double-digit targets that he's completed. Having said that, he still scored a touchdown. It's just the floor is so safe every single week. So even if the exposure comes in high, I'm totally fine with it. This is a terrific matchup against the Jets. Anthony Lynn even cannot screw up Keenan Allen's outlook. So I'm adding him to all of my tournament lineups.
Yeah, I love it. No Brian Poole for the Jets, who's clearly their best secondary person, and he was playing in the slot. So his matchup is going to be as good as it gets. And I think Keenan Allen probably has just as good of a chance of getting 10 catches and a touchdown and a 100-yard bonus as anybody on the slate. So, I love Keenan Allen.
What about your number? Let's go with largest entry tournament darts here as we continue building lineups.
Let's go with Amari Cooper, who I think you noticed this on the podcast. He was the most targeted player with Andy Dalton earlier in the year. And if we're just building in what our priors going into the season, we had Amari Cooper like comfortably in the lead. His price is way down. And he was popping early in the year. So I think that with the Vikings issues at corner, I think that Amari Cooper, even if you aren't stacking with Andy Dalton, I think that Amari Cooper paired with Dalvin Cook, if you go that direction, eat the chalk, is a totally rock solid play.
Okay. And Amari Cooper, like you said, even if it's just a mini stack, you don't even have to really stack with Andy Dalton. You can just go mini stack. Dalvin Cook, Amari Cooper, 19 targets, team high, as you mentioned, on 98 dropbacks from Dalton this year. So it seems pretty safe.
Let's go with Dalvin Cook then. Let's go Dalvin Cook and Amari.
Okay.
And then Keenan in.
I will. Do you want to lock Dalvin Cook in all 5 of these lineups we're going to build, or just lock him in as one that's going to get sprinkled in?
No, we can lock it up, see what it spits out at us.
Cool. And then, okay, on that case, screw it. Let's just go ahead and lock up Amari because I am leaning. That's my mini stack anyhow. So we'll do that. We'll leave Keenan Allen down here. My other large entry tournament dart, you're going to have to give me the ownership over there too, because I'm curious what Duke Johnson will come in at, because I think it's a unique way off of Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller, who I think will come in higher owned. Deshaun Watson, I'm expecting to be one of the higher roster quarterbacks on the entire week, but we can at least try to snag the touchdown equity from Duke Johnson, who, as we know, has gotten all 30 of Houston's running back carries Since David Johnson exited on the second drive a couple weeks ago, CJ Prosise got 1 touch last week. Clearly a non-factor. This is a completely different coaching staff than Mike Pettin, Hugh Jackson, and Bill O'Brien that he's played with before. So if anything, we're seeing him get all of the touches. And last week, the Browns, not only a tough matchup on the ground, of course, but a win game as well. So we haven't even seen really what Duke Johnson can do as a bell cow, and at least we know he's going to get the touches. So I like him. I don't mind running it back with Jacoby Myers. I don't mind Cam Newton just running him out there naked with no one. I like him with Jacoby Myers. This is a game I like anyhow. So Duke Johnson, I think, will be the one overlooked player despite getting the touches in that game.
Yeah, I think we can kind of throw out what happened last week just because of the wind, and his price didn't go up much. He saw 5,400. So yeah, I think there's reason to kind of fade what happened last week and buy into this. And like you said, I think Jacoby Myers might be one of the best values, just period. He's not even above 5,000 yet, and he's getting all of the air yards, all of the targets. Cam Newton's not throwing the ball to Jameer Byrd or N'Keal Harry at all. They're not throwing the ball to James White anymore. It's basically just him. So I think the other stack that I was looking at, if I don't go the Cowboys route, would be Cam Newton to Jacoby Myers, and then finding one of these Texans guys to come back with between. I think I'm leaning Brandon Cooks right now because his price is pretty appetizing, but I think Duke Johnson's going to probably come in at maybe a little less ownership.
Yeah, as well. Gondry brings up a good point that I was thinking about as well. What about fading Cook? And then the pivot would be the passing game and getting the touchdowns that way. The receivers are popping in the models, of course. Having said that, it's a tougher matchup. And by the way, this is how the millionaire and tournaments were split and or won on Monday night in the showdown slate. You faded Dalvin Cook. You ran it back with Thielen and Jefferson and Cousins. Having said that, this is a much better matchup against the Cowboys front seven. And so it just seems like fading Cook in this entire slate. Maybe you play Cousins, and in that case, you hope that it would be Amari Cooper that comes back with him. But again, against the Cowboys defense, this isn't the Bears defense. I'm really worried that Dalvin Cook just sinks you.
Yeah, I think between Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins, I think I'd rather just take the $1,000 price difference and go with Andy Dalton. I mean, Andy Dalton's going to throw more than Kirk Cousins is, and I get both of them have awesome receivers, and I think both defenses are total garbage. So I think I'd rather just take the Andy Dalton, who's probably going to be like 3%, 2% owned, and you can still sprinkle in. You don't have to go a full game stack to get off of Cook. I mean, even just going Jefferson over Cook is leveraging off of all the Cook ownership. I mean, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are negatively correlated with Dalvin Cook regardless. Do
you have any thoughts on Marvin Jones as well with Kenny Golladay and Danny Amendola out? Again, I was on the over early in the week. Now it seems like there's too many falling dominoes to figure out, but it seems like Marvin Jones' target share will still be safe.
Yeah, this is kind of it's less about Danny Amendola for me and more about how confident we are in Matthew Stafford, because I think Marvin Jones probably projects for like close to 10 targets, even if we expect a very run-heavy game script with Adrian Peterson. And yeah, Marvin Jones is the guy. It's him and Marvin Hall in 2 tight end sets when they go that way. And TJ Hawkinson is still kind of lumbering with his toe injury. I think he's still an upside play, and then you're going to play him wherever you can. But yeah, I think Marvin Jones is definitely got plenty of upside for a pretty cheap price tag. I don't think I would play him in cash just because I'm a little concerned about Stafford's thumb.
Yeah, and the tournament lineup, it spits out the highest scoring one here. It's spitting out, 2 Matthew Staffords, meaning that Matthew Stafford's probably popping according to the numbers. Having said that, TJ Hawkins' pricing still isn't where I like to pay for him, since he's pretty much like a 50-yard guy every single week, touchdown or bust. So I would go Marvin Jones in that case, Tony, if I'm stacking him. And then I go Jacoby Myers, who we've seen now have a 40% target share in 3 consecutive games. Just insane. Over Jameer Byrd, who's out there running wind sprints. So, and then Jonathan Taylor, of course, as we know, sure, he can definitely pop off. Like the Packers front seven is one we attack with running backs, but we don't know. It's purely just luck. If you play one, you could run into an RB2. You could also just run into a 0 in your lineup.
Yeah, I'm not going to play any of the Colts running backs. I would start Nyheim Hines in season-long leagues because you're getting the passing down work and the potential of a hot hand approach on the ground. But yeah, you're playing with fire there.
Also, CW, I'm just going to say Wiegert, I guess, asked about Damian Harris in a smash spot. And I agree, although Damian Harris is 5,600, I believe, on FanDuel. And since we know he doesn't have the receiving upside, he's not using the receiving game whatsoever. That's where I would play him. Perhaps he still gets there on DraftKings, honestly. And he is a good play this week for sure against the Texans defense that, of course, is allowing the most yards per game, most fantasy points to opposing running backs. But the lack of receptions on DraftKings just scares me off from guys like that.
Yeah, you're basically gambling that he is going to get the goal line touch over Cam Newton when they eventually get down there. And I mean, Cam Newton's, I think, tied for second inside the 5 carries this year, and he's missed a bunch of time. So he's always a tough person to rank just because I think he'll get upwards of 20 touches. But if all of those are coming at the 50-yard line and they're all carries, that's how you can get really left out to dry. So it's more of like a touchdown projection. But even like if he gets 80 yards and a touchdown at his price, I don't think that's really moving the needle. Like you need multiple scores or the 100-yard bonus here.
I also have for Rick pulled up here the 4K receivers. Let me know if you have any that are your favorites. I will say, though, because I've already been looking at this throughout the week, Michael Gallup, of course, and any Andy Dalton double stack for me at 3,700. Not AJ Green. I think his targets are false. Now has 19 or 27 yards the past 2 weeks on 10 targets. Just not there at all. I like Denzel Mims a whole lot if you're stacking Justin Herbert as the run back. Denzel Mims, of course, has run around on 100% of the team's dropbacks. Last week, 2 against the Patriots. Jamison Crowder, we expect to be back as a full-time player this week after the bye with 14 days of rest. But still, Denzel Mims is going to be out there every single snap. And what I still think is going over the total. And then the deep one, if you're playing like I don't know if there is a $15 or $25 millionaire maker this week, but either way, if you're playing like the 100K big, large entry tournaments, I think Jalen Guyton is not a bad double stack because he's also running a route on over 95% of Herbert's dropbacks. He's just literally not getting targets whatsoever. As Rich Rebar calls it, it's the what does he call it? It's the calorie burner award winner. Because he's just literally running wind sprints the entire time. He's not getting targets whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm looking at roster construction is I think I want to get like the Miles Sanders tier and try to come off of Dalvin Cook and the like highest price running backs and then go towards the like wide receiver ones and try to get like your Keenan Allen or Justin Jeffersons and stay in that tier, drop down to Jacoby Myers if you need it, drop down to Brandon Cooks if you need it, and try to avoid all of these guys. Because I think that a lot of the players, like the wide receivers in like the 6,000 range, are pretty strong this week. And I'm totally comfortable with a lot of the running backs that are in that 6,000 to 7,000, 7,200 with Aaron Jones tier. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards not buying into Dalvin Cook and trying to leverage off of him this week, which is pretty dangerous. But
do you have we talked about the running backs. We ranked them earlier, but do you have a favorite way? And is it the way you just said of just paying up at wide receiver rather than paying up for Dalvin Cook? And by the way, while you're talking, I'm going to optimize this Cowboys double stack just to see what happens here.
Yeah. I like Miles Sanders then going with Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. I think that's a really good way to get off of Dalvin Cook. I mean, Dalvin Cook's probably going to come close to like 30%. Just because you're getting all of the Alvin Kamara ownership pushed right down to our guy right here anyway. So I don't know. I don't think I want to be paying for a $9,000 running back who, yes, has a huge workload, but is not getting the amount of targets that you usually get from somebody that's priced this high. It's kind of like the boosted version of Derrick Henry's role where you're only getting 3 or 4 targets per week. And I think I want to leverage off of that.
And when I ran this, James Robinson comes up. And I will say that if you are running a Steeler stack, it's not even DJ Shark for me. Like James Robinson's the only player I'm playing, especially with Chris Thompson on IR now. Like James Robinson now has been in 2 instances this year. One was a full game where Thompson was on the COVID list. The other was last week when Thompson left, and he's handled 100% of the team's backfield touches. There's just no one else to go to. Perhaps Divine Azigbo will be active, but it doesn't matter whatsoever. So James Robinson would be the one guy I'm going to, although I fear that Jake Luton is still just going to sink that offense altogether.
The other running back I'm looking at, and this is really disgusting, is James Conner. He's 6,600. We don't like paying that price tag. We talked about this on the Roto World podcast. He's not getting the bell cow touches, but he's getting the bell cow snaps. And you're going to get obviously a lot of big Ben stacks, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju, all of them are going to catch ownership. The best way to get leverage off of that is to go James Conner. Obviously, they have a huge point spread, a huge team total. James Conner, in theory, could get 20 touches, could do some damage at the goal line. And I think that he's an okay pivot in tournaments, despite the total lack of explosion and basically the lack of touches that he's seen the last couple of weeks, just because the Steelers have opted for a pass-heavy approach. But that's also bringing a lot of ownership across the board too. So I think that he's an interesting leverage play as well.
I get it. I totally get it. But to be totally transparent, he's not going to be in my player pool whatsoever. And that could be bad because last week he was a bell cow quietly. The first time all year he's played over 80% of the team's snaps. So a season high in snaps, and also handled 13 of their 15 backfield touches. And Jalen Samuel's been ruled out, which opens perhaps up a little more in the passing game for him. So it's very clear he's the only running back they want to use. But we've seen now the past 2 weeks, what they've done is build a lead with the 6th highest pass play rate and neutral game script, and then lean on the passing game for the 3rd highest pass play rate with a lead. And so I still think Roethlisberger, and then 2 of, you can take your choice. This week in particular, I think I'd lean Juju and Claypool over Deontay, even though I will rank Deontay higher in season-long rankings for whatever that's worth. But you can pick 2 of them, and you just play them, and maybe you don't even run it back, honestly, because maybe they don't win you a tournament, which is what we're trying to do here, but you're not going to lose a tournament with a Ben double stack. They're going to get there for sure.
Yeah. This is more just a complete leverage play. If I was just trying to build a good lineup and just trying to min cash or something, then I think that using James Conner is nuts. But I think that he projects decent enough at 6,600, and there's not a absolute must play like we've had in the last couple weeks that I think that you can kind of get away from the must plays range and get kind of stoop down to some of these plays that are a little more uncomfortable than we're used to playing. And I think that James Conner fits that build.
It is time for everyone's favorite segment, though, the fade of the week, or fades of the week. So Hayden, go ahead and lead us off. Who is the one player you were going to fade despite ownership, despite public conversation, despite everything this week?
I will be playing no Saints players this week unless we get breaking news that Jameis Winston is going to be the starter, but I'm not expecting that to happen. I will not be playing any of them. The other person, and I get he projects well, but it's Devontae Adams at 8,600. The price is getting up. He's got a little bit of an ankle issue. We've seen the Packers kind of really take it easy with Devontae Adams, even in games earlier in the year. The matchup is not the greatest for whatever that's worth. But I like the Keenan Allen tier of receivers a lot. And I think I like Aaron Jones more than Devontae Adams. And I'm guessing Devontae Adams is going to be the highest rostered receiver. And if
tournaments, you think so?
It'll be close.
Man, I didn't think anyone was. I just
don't think that there's going to be there's not a must play. I mean, Dalvin Cook, I guess, but we're lacking elite quarterbacks this week. We're lacking elite tight ends. We're lacking a bunch of elite running back options this week. So I think that a lot of people are going to be paying up for Devontae Adams. I could have that wrong, but I think that'll be one of the higher owned guys. As long as, I think he was left off the injury report. I believe that was what happened today.
Yeah, he DNP Wednesday, Thursday, back at full practice Friday, left off the injury report. Last week, of course, left with the ankle injury, but he came back and still jumped out of the stadium for that touchdown. So I assumed, I didn't even worry about him in practice. I assumed he was healthy.
Yeah, I think I just like the other wide receivers that are like $1,000 to $2,000 cheaper. And I don't know if he's going to be 25%. I'll take my chances at some lower owned guys.
I am fading Terry McLaurin this week, and I hate to do that. He is one of my favorite players, but again, I think he's going to, at the end of the week, come in very high rostered. I think everyone's going to catch on to that game and go directly to him, whereas I think Antonio Gibson is the better play because, as we've seen, this line continues increasing in favor of Washington, and also, much like last week, if Washington can get Burrow under pressure, seems like he's under pressure every week. That's where he's been bad this year. 37 of 97 on the season, 35th in completion rate under pressure. Didn't complete a pass on 14 dropbacks under pressure against the Steelers last week. And so that's what game script would set up for, is that Washington's pass defense winning this game and then riding Antonio Gibson in a positive game script, since we know he's not used in -1, which also cancels out or leverages off of J.D. McKissic. So I think Antonio Gibson is the much better play for tournaments over Terry McLaurin. God help me.
Yeah, I think Antonio Gibson's in the good spot. I wouldn't be playing J.D. McKissic. I think you're kind of like chasing your tail. Those are like pretty perfect game environments for J.D. McKissic. And yeah, I'm not going to be buying into J.D. McKissic's role. I think that is going to be Antonio Gibson week.
If Teddy Bridgewater goes, we can talk about Curtis Samuel, but does your outlook for the Panthers offense change whatsoever against the Lions?
Yeah, obviously a good spot. Curtis Samuel is going to be getting some carries with Mike Davis kind of trending in the wrong direction on the field wise. Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't think that Teddy's going to play though. Like I'm pretty sure he's out. So I'm not going to be playing any of the Panthers guys.
Okay, that's fair. I don't think I will either, even though Robbie Anderson is someone I've still been considering. But without Teddy Bridgewater, like we've seen Will Grier, first of all. We know Will Grier, like you were definitely playing the Lions offense if Will Grier's named starter. And PJ Walker maybe gets something going on the ground. But historically, rushing quarterbacks take more sacks, which is what makes the Lions offense Lions defense more tantalizing in that spot. And again, I think everyone's only citing Walker's XFL stats, and they're going to come in overweight on him. If someone comes in overweight on an XFL player, like I'm going the opposite way every time. So I'm playing the Lions defense. Also, someone mentioned it earlier. Taysom Hill named starter. Like the Falcons defense is still in play. Also more sacks, fumbles, of course. Taysom Hill's fumbled 4 times on how many touches does he have this year? 40? Like it's a disastrous ratio. So of course I'm still going the Falcons defense as well. And then even if Jameis comes off the bench, like we get pick sixes. So this is easy. I wanted to play the Falcons defense with Jameis anyways. So I will gladly play the Falcons defense with Taysom Hill under center.
Yeah, I mean, Taysom Hill is not a drop back quarterback. And if the game plan is to give Taysom Hill 25 dropbacks, I mean, yeah, they're in play.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our favorite stacks of the week. This is where we picked each other's brains and ended up on the Bucks last week, despite the fact that neither of us went overweight on them like donkeys. So let's try to do better this week in playing our own plays. Go ahead with yours.
I think the best, just the straight 95-mile-an-hour fastball is Cam Newton, Jacoby Myers. They're both reasonably priced. We've seen the ceiling from Cam Newton, obviously with his legs. Obviously, we know Houston's run defense is horrible. They're missing their best run-stopping linebacker. You have a very clear-cut pairing with Jacoby Myers, who's just like dominating a target share, dominating air yard share. The Texans can't defend the pass either, so I think that there's a very clear path to just single stacking with Cam, and then there's plenty of run-back options. My preferred one is Brandon Cooks, and with Jacoby Myers, Brandon Cooks, and Cam Newton, you're not paying that much for this stack. So you can go up to Dalvin Cook if you wish. You can go up to the Keenan Allen, the Devontae Adams if you wish. You have all of the money in the world to jam in whoever you want at that point, because Jacoby Myers and Brandon Cook's probably $500 to $1,000 too cheap. I mean, Jacoby Myers' role is good, and I think he looks pretty good out there.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's a condensed target tree, which is what we like about the Patriots offense. I mean, it's only, if it's going through the air, it's only one person. And even although Damian Harris, like I said, is a good play on FanDuel, the fact is like it's still Cam Newton's backfield. He could easily just not even vulture touchdowns. Like he is the touchdown guy inside the 5. So I still like Cam Newton a whole lot as well. My only concern for Cam is that I really think he's going to finish as the highest roster quarterback on the entire slate on DraftKings. Like, I think he's a really good price, and I think that game is an obvious one to attack. Do you have the ownership over there on him?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like teetering at like the 10% range. I don't.
That's
I'm
not
not sure.
bad. That's not too bad, honestly.
Yeah, I think a lot of the quarterbacks are just going to be hovering around that. I don't think that Cam Newton is like such a dominating play that he's going to be above that by too much. The other thing to note is with the Texans, they're allowing the second most carries per game just because their run defense is so bad. Like, you're going to see a lot of Cam Newton. And I mean, he has two rushing touchdowns ceiling with a passing touchdown, which definitely would be the favorite would be Jacoby Myers. So I think you're capturing all of the upside of the Patriots offense, and this kind of just like trust the process with old Bill Belichick.
All right, my favorite stack, if it comes in under 10% at the end of the day, we'll have to find out Sunday morning how it's trending. I like the Roethlisberger double stack a whole lot. Don't even know if I'd run it back with somebody. I think I'd just play it knowing they're going to throw the ball with a lead. And so Roethlisberger, Juju, and Claypool for DraftKings would be my pick. On FanDuel, I'd probably go Deontay over Juju, but I like it a whole lot. The one I think for larger fields that we haven't even really talked about is getting off Dalvin Cook, going to Derrick Henry, and then running back with Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, and/or Mark Andrews. The more I look at that game, the more I'm convinced that's the one I'm going to stack with Lamar Jackson in tournaments. No one's talking about him pretty much in a sneaky spot. The Titans are missing the left side of their offensive line, Taylor Lewin, Roger Saffold. The issue is the Ravens are missing their pass rush on that side with Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams. So I think there's a really great chance that both offenses go nuts here. Adoree Jackson's still out for the Titans as well. And then, of course, if you want to use Dalvin Cook, you can still get off Henry, just in case you are worried about the offensive line on early downs, and go to A.J. Brown, who I don't think many are going to play either, which it's kind of a bad spot against Marlon Humphrey, sure. But prior to last week, they were just shoving him targets, Browns, at least seven in every game he played, despite the fact that Corey Davis has been involved for 4 or 5 games here with them. And then, of course, also, his box score would have looked much better, Browns would have, had he caught that 50-yard touchdown from Ryan Tannehill. So it just seems like a sneaky spot to throw out Lamar Jackson, who has been healthy now, over 10 carries in his last 3 games. You run out with Mark Andrews on a weak tight end slate. And Andrews, of course, like I said, is probably the strongest play outside of Taysom Hill on the board. And then you run it back with A.J. Brown and still get to roster Dalvin Cook. That's the kind of way I'm leaning on a Friday night.
Yeah, the thing with the Ravens is the Titans are allowing either the most pass attempts per game or the second most pass attempts per game on defense. Teams are attacking them through the air. So I think that's when you're seeing a better chance for Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews to pop, especially considering the injuries like you outlined for the Titans. I don't think that Jadeveon Clowney's playing either. So yeah, I mean, the Titans defense is obviously weak. They've been weak the entire year. They're missing pieces still. So I think that you could get kind of reverse or fade like the most recent games for the Ravens. You've seen the upside with Mark Andrews. It's definitely you have to kind of trust the process, hope that they find some better form. But yeah, I think those two are awesome. Are you definitely leaning towards Mark Andrews over Marquise Brown?
Yes. Only because position scarcity.
For sure.
I wanted to play Mo Alley Cox, honestly, because the Colts total has increased. It's been the highest increase for any implied team total this week. That game has increased from 49 to 51, which is now the highest on Sunday's main slate. Having said that, Jack Doyle practiced in full on Thursday and Friday. So Alley Cox now we know will share the tight ends room with three guys, Trey Burton, Doyle himself, as opposed to being the lone guy ahead of Burton now. So I don't even know of a cheap tight end unless you have one you were thinking about.
I like Logan Thomas, who's a little bit of you're kind of leveraging off Terry McLaurin if he gets popular. Antonio Gibson, of course, and yeah, he's been a full-time player. And I think that if we're gonna, I'm guessing that J.D. McKissic can't have a 30% target share every week. Like that, those have to be.
Or can he?
Yeah, I'm hoping that slides down to like 20%. 10% kind of gets distributed to like Logan Thomas's of the world. And I think that he's really affordable. And worst case, you're paying as little as you can or close to as little as you can at a tight end position. That's probably going to be very low scoring once again.
Parmar agrees with you, by the way. Miles Sanders lock button. I forgot that Myles Garrett was out as well for this game. So it is a really good spot. He's going to come in under rostered despite having workhorse usage last week. Just came up short on the touchdowns. Corey Clement and Boston Scott, much fewer touches, but ended up with the touchdowns. With that, any other caveats on the slate that we might have missed before we get out of here?
Nope, it's good. It's time to go grind some Andy Dalton film to see if I'm going to actually fire away with an Andy Dalton, Amari Cooper stack, run it back with Justin Jefferson. It makes too much sense on paper with getting off of the leverage we've seen this game with the Cowboys, but put in some faith in some bad players.
To answer Fear and Saul's question really quick, last time we saw Irv Smith was in that 2-touchdown game against the Lions, right? It was against the Lions?
Yeah.
But
nine routes.
But he ran 9 routes in that game. So don't go chasing waterfalls or that production. Usage, I should say, really. Right. Yeah, and with that, I think we broke down everything here. Those are the slates. That's where we're at Friday night. Other than that, thanks for everyone tuning in. Hayden, tell the people where they can find you for the rest of the week.
Yep, tonight going over the injury reports, adding it to my fantasy blueprint column, getting some blurbs up on the site. So follow me on Twitter at Hayden Winks. And and then I think the Thanksgiving slate, you got to tune into that. There's like a lot of strategy. It's less about picking the right players and picking the right lineup constructions and leverages, especially on a 3-game slate with late swap. We'll go over all of it. But yeah, the Wednesday show should be one of the best of the year.
Again, Wednesday, we'll be back to discuss the Thanksgiving slate only this time. Whatever channel you're watching it on, all of them, we'll be back then, and then I'll have a Friday article this time on rotoworld.com. Until then, at NotJDaigle on Twitter, rate, review, and subscribe to the Roto-World Football Podcast. The preview show is up right now, and then we will be back on all these channels an hour before kickoff with answering your start-sit questions, which actual more information and inactives. That way we can actually be accurate. So until then, again, thanks guys for tuning in. We will see you Wednesday. Have a good weekend.